First story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my brother the reality of getting married young? I'll keep it short. My brother is 19, as is his girlfriend. The two are currently engaged. She wants a quick wedding, and he asked me for advice. I, 30 female, got married at 18. My husband and I are still together, so I assumed my brother thought we were perfect to ask. My brother asked me what getting married so young was like, as he assumed everything would be exactly the same as it is now except he'd be married. I told him no, everything changes. I basically told him that being married no matter your age is hard, and even more so when you're young. Every decision you make isn't just about you, but also your spouse. You combine more things, such as money, and you sacrifice a lot so you can reach a comfortable compromise. I said, yeah, there are a lot of positives, but being married is a lot different than being engaged or just dating. I said I needed to be prepared as it was a life commitment, and to only do it if you really think you can make it work. I guess he wasn't expecting my brutal honesty, as all of a sudden, the idea of him and his fiancée getting married was shot down by him. Now, I've got my parents and their family telling me how much of an a-hole I am, because I'm preventing them from doing what they want to do. Now for the top comments. Not an a-hole. He asked and you delivered. Getting married at that age is something that shouldn't be rushed into, and it's good you told him straight. It sounds like if that's the parents' reaction, they expected your brother and his girlfriend to rush into a marriage he clearly doesn't want or isn't ready for. Yeah, I'm really wondering why the parents are so keen for their kids to be married so young. Definitely not an a-hole. You were honest and gave balanced advice. It sounds like he had a romanticized idea of marriage and you gave him some much-needed clarity. Not an a-hole. He doesn't want to get married so young and is looking for confirmation. At least that's what I read from his reaction. How has he treated you since? He has been completely fine. He hasn't really been talking about it though. Not an a-hole. Anyone who can be talked out of marriage in a couple of conversations about the realities of commitment and responsibility should not be getting married. Yeah, I was going to say, what Opie wrote in the post isn't even bad. If they're engaged, ideally they should already be thinking of themselves as a unit and making decisions for the good of both people. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my brother he needs to accept the fact he's poor? I'm 8 years older than my brother, who's in his second year of university. I was lucky enough to have my parents be in a position to pay for everything, as well as send me money weekly. This meant I graduated with zero debt and was able to travel. I didn't have to work, but I did because I enjoyed bartending work. I'm aware of just how lucky I was. I'm not denying it. However, since I've finished uni, my parents' fortunes have taken a turn for the worse. Due to my father's illness and a variety of other factors, my parents are unable to finance quite the same lifestyle for my brother as they were for me. Now, to be clear, it's not as if he's on the breadline. In the UK, university is £9,250 a year, which is paid for by the government and repaid after graduation, and only on what you earn over £21,000 a year like a graduate tax. He also has a maintenance loan of around £6,000, often used for day-to-day expenses, which is repaid in the same way. He's at uni for roughly 27 weeks a year, so that amounts to £220 a week. There's also his rent, but I pay that and he won't need to repay me. With all this said, my brother keeps complaining how he has no money and that he can't do anything. He complains to our parents, who are stretched thin, so won't be able to help and causes them stress. He complains to me, asking me to send him money, despite the fact I pay his rent and phone bill. Eventually, I became so irritated by his incessant complaining that I warned him that if he were to ever complain to my parents, I'd cut him off. I told him £200 a week was more than enough to live on, and if he was adamant about not being able, or wanting, to work, he'd have to accept being poor and set his expectations low. He didn't take this well and accused me of not being able to understand his position, as I was able to do pretty much what I wanted at uni, and how it isn't fair how he can't do the same. I said, well, it might not be fair, it is how it is, and he had to move on. Now for the top comments. Not a a-hole. Rent is typically the biggest monthly cost and he doesn't have to pay it. And he doesn't have to pay for his phone, so basically he has £200 a week to spend on food and necessities. That's plenty. If it's not, he can get a job and live within his means. Not an a-hole. I'm a grown adult supporting a family and don't spend the equivalent of $275 on food and random stuff every week. That's nearly a full-time minimum wage job in the US. $275 times 52 weeks is equal to $14,300 divided by 7.5 per hour. Federal minimum wage is equal to 1,972 hours. Full-time is 2,080. I'm not saying anyone should ever try to live in US minimum wage because our economy is literally a joke. But the point is, $275 a week is dang good money for an unemployed college student. Not a day-hole. £200 a week? I lived off £3,000 a month after rent, and I felt rich in comparison to a lot of my friends. It's unfortunate that he hasn't been able to have the same experience as you, but in comparison to most people at university, he is very wealthy. Mate, I thought this exactly. My student loan left me with £75 after rent, and I got a job to up my amount to £350 a month. I was far from the most strapped for cash. Not a hole. Your brother may have a worse experience than you did, but it doesn't give him the right to complain and demand so much from you when your whole family's already doing their best. You didn't mention anything about him working or anything, so I won't assume, but maybe he should consider trying to give his fair share of labor. The next story is titled, Am I the a-hole for not apologizing for yelling at my aunt who made me homeless? I'm female 23 and my boyfriend is 24. February of last year, when universities closed, I found myself in my hometown without anywhere to live. Was in a dorm as a resident assistant. My boyfriend's lease was up and he was having trouble finding a place. My parents don't have room, so we were scrambling to find a place. I had lost my income and we were on a really tight budget. We almost drove to my boyfriend's hometown, but being the only medically literate person in the family, I didn't want to leave my grandparents without help in case anyone got sick. My grandparents have a cabin in the next town, and realizing that we were in a bind, Grandma offered it to us. My boyfriend and I got COVID jobs, and I continued my online medical studies. Boyfriend put in a ton of hours for building the deck, repairing parts of the dirt road, and trimming trees. Mid-May, my aunt calls me and asks if she can bring 4 housed guests up for 2 weeks. I explained that while we wouldn't turn her away, it was not the best timing and we didn't have 4 beds. I suggested they could come up for a shorter time or stay nearby. She said okay and she would think of a solution. Hours later, my grandfather calls and says we have 2 weeks to get the F out of my house, permanently. I explained that we would be forced to quit our jobs and live in my van. He said he was under no obligation to honor our agreement from February. My dad called to make my case, but my aunt insisted that she already purchased plane tickets and needed a vacation. She also said that she was going to take my grandparents to the cabin with her to give my parents a break from taking care of them. They need hands-on care for mobility, GRAM, and dementia, GRAMP. 2 weeks later, we were back in the van. Later, Auntie called asking me to drive up and get my cousin so she could go to lunch. When I arrived, my grandpa looked bruised, and it turned out that while my aunt was visiting friends the day before, he had fallen off a chair changing a light bulb. He had clearly torn something rotator cuff related in his shoulder. As I put together what had happened, I got upset. We went aside, and I yelled at my aunt for being negligent in elder care, called her greedy for making 2 people homeless/jobless so she could go on vacation. I told her that she had to cancel her plans and take Grandpa to the emergency room. They ended up staying only 3 days before going back to town. I haven't spoken to my aunt since. I have apologized for sharp words to my grandma. A week ago, my grandma called saying I better call and apologize to my aunt, that I know the value of having people on my side, which seemed like Auntie had been complaining. When asked directly, my grandma said I was being immature. I called my aunt and said if she wanted to mend bridges, to leave my grandma out of it. I didn't apologize. My aunt says they didn't do anything illegal, and I think they were all a-holes. Not an a-hole. They sound awful. All of them. I hope your situation gets better soon. Thank you. We were able to find a place just as it started snowing. I was going to add that, but was pushing up against the word limit. I'm glad about that. Did you ever figure out what your aunt told your grandfather to get him to kick you out like that? I was surprised that didn't come up in your account, and I wonder if part of the reason some of your family is unsupportive of you here is that some nasty remnants of your aunt's lies are floating around in the family, getting them to interpret your actions negatively. I never found out, beyond that she was sad on coming on vacation. I suspect that she went on about how they were enabling us to be freeloaders, or maybe even that we posed a risk due to our COVID patient care jobs. Not the a-hole. I'm sorry you have such horrible relatives. If Gram calls again, I'd straight up ask her how she feels making you homeless. Is her daughter's vacation more important than a granddaughter having a place to live? Yes, well, good luck then, Gram. Have a nice life. Did go no contact with them. Also r/just no family. Yep, I can't believe the entitlement of the aunt. Or that the grandparents would make their own grandchild homeless to accommodate aunt's freaking vacation. Not at a-hole, but please stop letting your family treat you horribly. Now for the last story. Am I the a-hole for wanting to kick my sister-in-law and her boyfriend to the curb when they have nowhere to go? Long story short, my 23 female, sister-in-law 20 female, and her boyfriend 20 male have come to live with us because they got kicked out of the boyfriend's parents' house and then my in-laws' house. My in-laws struggle with substance abuse and my husband is my sister-in-law's only sibling. We told them they could come stay with us, as long as they got jobs and sister-in-law got her GED and they cleaned up after themselves. We don't charge them any rent and they were only supposed to pitch in like $200 a month for groceries when they started working. We have 2 kids and my husband is the only one working currently. They have been here since the end of October and only one of them is working. Altogether, I'd say they've worked maybe 3 weeks and they're on workplace number 4. It's been 3 months. They argue with us when we tell them to do things, complain that the Wi-Fi doesn't reach their bedroom so it makes playing video games hard, refuse to pay for any of the groceries or household supplies they use. They have enough money to buy booze and vape pods, but not enough to pay their car insurance, which led them getting a court date when they got pulled over. Guess who got to pay for their car insurance? Us. This is literally wrecking my marriage because I'm so angry all the time from these freaking adult moochers living in my house. We have offered to pay for a deposit and first month's rent on an apartment for them, but they don't want that. I've got to be able to keep a job for longer than a week first. Direct quote from my sister-in-law. Not to mention, she's been talking about having a baby. We've tried nicely talking to them. I've tried being hard on them too, and nothing is working. I'm done, and I want them out. Would I be the a-hole if I told them they can either pay for half of an apartment, and we can pay the other half by April 1st, or they can find somewhere to go? Either way, they're getting the hell out of our house, even if it's to the streets. Now for the top comments. Not a a-hole. You've offered 2 months of free rent for their own apartment. They don't want to work. Kick them to the curb because then it'll be, would I be the a-hole if I kick my pregnant sister-in-law and husband to the curb? I still remember that AITA about some family member/relative who moved in with their significant other and coincidentally, after being asked to move out after overstaying their welcome, announced they were pregnant and acting like they were going to be staying after all. Not the a-hole. Your offer is much more reasonable than the offer I would make them. When even their parents won't let them freeload anymore, it sure as hell doesn't make it your problem. Would I be the a-hole if I told them they can either pay for half of an apartment and we can pay the other half by April 1st? What is wrong with tomorrow or the other day after that? Why are you waiting until April 1st, Opie? You said yourself that it's ruining your marriage. You really think you have another month and a half to spare? Tell them to get the hell off and save your marriage. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. It's time to sit down with your husband and draw your boundaries. Your sister-in-law is ruining your family dynamic and mental health, and husband needs to step up and put you and your children first. Give them a 30-day eviction and call it a day. You don't owe them rent or a deposit. The only people you owe anything to are your young children who need every bit of your family's limited resources. Let the 2 adults figure their own lives. Every dollar you waste on sister-in-law is money that could go towards your children's or your savings/retirement. I get your husband feels obligated to her because of their shared trauma from terrible parents, but at the end of the day, you and your children need to be the #1 priority. And that's the end of this video, folks. As always, leave a comment and hit like and subscribe. And if you want more of this content, turn your notification on to get updated on the latest videos. And I'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.